In the stillness of a cold night in Los Angeles, Elon Musk, the man famous for his dreams of conquering Mars, knelt before a 5-year-old girl, lost and trembling on an empty bus. There were no parents waiting for her. No one came to help. Only a billionaire, his heart suddenly overflowing with a paternal instinct he had not anticipated. It was a moment that would change everything. Not just for the little girl, but for Elon as well. Why was a billionaire on a bus, and what compelled him to care for this helpless child? Let's rewind to a few hours earlier. It was a late Wednesday afternoon as Los Angeles began to be bathed in the soft glow of yellow streetlights. Elon Musk had just left SpaceX headquarters after a long day packed with important meetings. The latest neural network project was progressing well, but it did little to alleviate the weariness he felt. Standing in the parking lot, staring at the private car waiting for him, a sudden thought struck him. Maybe I need to try something different today. Instead of getting into the luxurious car, he turned onto the nearby street. He couldn't remember the last time he'd taken a bus, but the idea struck him as oddly appealing. Blending into the crowded bus stop, no one recognized the billionaire with hundreds of billions of dollars standing among them. People were too busy staring at their phones, engrossed in conversations, or simply lost in their own worlds to notice the unassuming man beside them. Elon savored the anonymity. He stood quietly, observing the crowd, breathing in the crisp evening air, and enjoying the tranquility that seeped into his being. When the bus rolled into the station, he stepped aboard and swiped his card like any other passenger. Inside, only a few people were scattered about, their faces marked by exhaustion after a long day. Elon chose a seat near the middle of the bus, sat down, and gazed out of the window. The city stretched before him in twinkling lights, a bustling rhythm of life he had been distanced from for so long. He wasn't thinking about Mars, AI, or technological revolutions. For the first time in years, his mind wasn't racing. The steady hum of the bus engine brought a strange sense of peace, like a familiar melody he had somehow forgotten. Elon closed his eyes for a moment, embracing the stillness. It was a rare pause in his fast-pacing, high-pressure life, though he didn't know that something extraordinary was about to unfold. The bus route carried Elon through contrasting neighborhoods where the shimmering lights of luxurious mansions quickly gave way to quieter, smaller streets, steeped in silence. As stop after stop passed, passengers came and went, but the strange stillness of the late evening remained. Then, something caught Elon's attention. A little girl sat quietly at the very back of the bus. She couldn't have been older than 5, so small she seemed swallowed by the oversized bus seat. Her soft hair, slightly messy, partly obscured her delicate face. She clung tightly to a well-worn teddy bear, its fur frayed from age, while a pink backpack lay still beside her, like her only companion. Her large, round eyes gazed out the window, as though searching for something, or someone, in the infinite darkness of the night. But there was nothing to see, except the faint, flickering lights of deserted streets. Elon reassured herself that her parents must be nearby or that they would get off at the next stop, but as the bus came to a halt again, and more passengers stepped off, the little girl remained, huddled in her thin pink jacket that offered little protection against the night's cold. No one approached her. No one seemed to care. He glanced around the bus, scanning for any adults who might be accompanying her. All he saw were tired faces and eyes glued to phone screens, each person engrossed in their private world. The girl was like a small shadow, forgotten amidst the bustle of others' lives. Elon felt his chest tighten, an unfamiliar sensation stirring within him. This wasn't the kind of feeling he usually compartmentalized and controlled. No, this was different. It was an instinct, a sudden surge of paternal empathy ignited by the sight of the child. If this were one of my children, how terrified would they be? The thought struck him like a warning bell. The girl's tiny voice broke the silence. "Go to sleep, little bear. Mommy will be back soon." Elon froze. It wasn't a cheerful song like children often sing, but a sad lullaby. Her voice was so small, so fragile, as though she sang just loud enough for herself to hear. Yet in the quiet of the bus, Her words echoed in Elon's mind, reverberating with an unexpected weight. It wasn't the song itself, but the way she sang it. A quiet, desperate attempt by a lonely child to reassure herself. Her gaze stayed fixed on the window, but her small face betrayed unease. Her tiny fingers stroked the worn teddy bear as if hoping it might respond, might tell her everything would be okay. But the bear remained silent. So did the world around her. Elon could feel the overwhelming loneliness in her song, in her huddled figure. She didn't cry, but the silence, her effort to hold herself together, was more heartbreaking than any tears could have been. Who is she waiting for? Where is her mother? Why hasn't anyone come for her? The question swirled in Elon's mind. He was just a passenger on this bus, a stranger. But his heart tightened, and he knew he couldn't simply sit there and pretend this wasn't happening. He had to do something, now. Elon took a deep breath. Rising to his feet, his eyes locked onto the small figure at the back of the bus. The little girl needed someone, and in this moment, Elon knew he wouldn't let her face this fear alone. The bus shuddered slightly before coming to a full stop at the final station. The street outside was so silent that the sound of the wind rustling through the trees was crystal clear. Elon walked closer, lowering himself to his knees on the bus floor to meet the frightened eyes of the little girl. His heart pounded. Not out of anxiety, but from the overwhelming wave of sorrow that swept through him. No one was waiting for her. No one was there to wrap her in their arms. On this empty bus, there was only a man who dreamed of distant stars and a child left to face a harsh reality alone. Kneeling before her, Elon realized this might be one of the most meaningful moments of his life. For a brief second, he thought of his own children. What would it be like if they were in this situation? How terrified would they be, waiting with no arms to rescue them? The thought that this small girl might have been abandoned or separated from her family left a lump in his throat. He forced a gentle smile, trying to make it as reassuring as possible. "Hey, it's okay. I'm here to help," he said in a warm, soothing tone. "Can you tell me your name?" The girl shifted slightly, her wide eyes filled with worry, but she didn't let go of her teddy bear. Her small hands trembled as she clutched it tightly, as if fearing it too might leave her. After a moment, she looked up, her lips moving faintly as she whispered, "Lila." Just one word, but to Elon, it felt like a light piercing through the darkness. She had been brave enough to speak. He noticed dried tear streaks on her cheeks, evidence that she had been crying for a long time. "Hi, Lila, I'm Elon. Do you know where your parents are, or did you get lost?" he asked gently, his eyes filled with reassurance. Lila nodded, then shook her head, her lips quivering. "I don't know where my mom is," she murmured, her voice so soft it was barely audible. "I waited for her, but she didn't come." Elon's chest tightened. This little girl had been waiting in vain, holding on to a sliver of hope that her mother would show up, but no one had come. All the stress and pressure of work, the weight of grand projects, suddenly faded into insignificance. In this moment, the only thing that mattered was ensuring Lila's safety. The bus driver, who had been quietly observing from the rearview mirror, stepped forward, his face etched with concern. "Is everything okay? Is she lost?" he asked. "She is," Elon replied with a nod. "She said she's been waiting for her mom, but no one came to pick her up." "Poor thing," the driver sighed. "Should we call the police?" Elon glanced at Lila, his expression soft but full of sorrow. "Yes, call the police," he said firmly. "But first, let her know she's not alone." The driver nodded and stepped off the bus to make the call, leaving Elon alone with Lila. He sat down beside her, his gaze fixed on her small, downcast face. The fear in her eyes was heartbreaking. Suddenly, Lila's tiny, trembling hand reached out and clasped his. That small gesture carried an immense weight, a fragile trust, as if she were clinging to the last warmth the world had to offer. Elon gently squeezed her hand, his eyes kind. "It's okay, Lila, I'm here with you," he reassured her, his voice steady and protective. Moments later, the driver returned, followed by a police officer with a kind face. The officer crouched down to Lila's eye level, offering a soft smile. "Hi there, I'm Officer Mike. Can you tell me your name?" Lila glanced at Elon for reassurance, then whispered, "Lila." "That's a beautiful name, Lila. Don't worry, we're here to help you find your mom," Mike said gently, his voice full of care. Lila nodded, but continued holding tightly onto Elon, as if letting go would make everything fall apart. The three of them stepped off the bus under the dim streetlights, but as soon as her feet touched the pavement, Elon felt Lila begin to tremble. Her small body in his arms was like a flickering flame, and her flushed face and labored breathing sent alarm bells ringing in his head. "I feel cold," Lila murmured weakly, her voice barely audible. The strain of fear and exhaustion had clearly taken its toll. Elon held her close, trying to keep her warm as Mike quickly assessed her condition. Pressing a hand to her forehead, the officer frowned. "She's burning up. She has a high fever. We need to get her to a hospital right away," he said urgently. Without hesitation, Elon nodded. They hurried into the police car, its sirens slicing through the night as they raced toward the nearest hospital. In the hospital room, doctors worked swiftly to care for Lila. Elon stayed by her bedside, his eyes never leaving her small figure. He held her tiny hand, feeling her breaths grow steadier. When her eyes fluttered open, she looked at him and gave him a faint smile. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice soft but filled with gratitude. Elon smiled back, nodding gently, silently vowing that she would never have to feel alone again. After what felt like an eternity, the door to the hospital room swung open, and a woman rushed in. The harsh fluorescent lights illuminated her pale face, and swollen, tear-filled eyes. Streams of tears ran unchecked down her cheeks, leaving glistening trails on her exhausted skin. Her disheveled hair and trembling hands, clasped tightly together, betrayed her struggle to maintain composure. But her voice, frantic and quivering, lay bare her uncontrollable worry. "Lila!" The cry filled the room, saturated with the desperation of a mother drained physically and emotionally after an agonizing search for her child. Lila lifted her head from Elon's shoulder at the sound of her mother's voice. Her eyes lit up, joy overwhelming the exhaustion etched on her small face. "Mommy!" she exclaimed, her voice tiny but brimming with emotion as she stretched her little arms toward her mother. In that moment, the world seemed to fade away, leaving only the reunion of mother and child. After hours of anguish and fear, the woman collapsed to her knees, her legs unable to hold her any longer, and pulled Lila into a fierce embrace. The hug was so tight that it seemed even time itself couldn't pry them apart. Tears flowed freely, mingling relief, pain, and unconditional love. I'm so sorry, I was so scared for you," she sobbed, her words repeating like a mantra of guilt and regret. But for Lila, all that mattered was the warmth of her mother's arms, soothing every ounce of fear she had endured. Thank you so much," the mother cried, her voice breaking as she turned to Elon and the officers. Her eyes shone with profound gratitude. "I don't know what would have happened if it weren't for you." Elon smiled softly, his expression carrying genuine empathy. "I'm just glad she's safe, that's all that matters," he replied, with heartfelt sincerity. The woman, who introduced herself as May, quickly explained the circumstances that had led to the heartbreaking ordeal. A nurse by profession, she had been caught up in an emergency case at work, losing track of time and unable to meet Lila at the bus stop as planned. Panicked and scared, Lila had boarded the bus in the hope it would take her somewhere safe. It was a series of terrifying events, but thanks to Elon and everyone involved, mother and daughter were now reunited. As Lila clung tightly to her mother, Elon noticed the profound exhaustion etched on May's face. Her tears were not only of relief, but also carried a deeper, more lingering pain. Sensing the weight she bore, Elon gently asked, "Are you all right? Is everything okay?" May hesitated, her eyes lowering as if mustering the courage to speak. "We lost a father to cancer just a few months ago," she admitted, her voice breaking. "I've been working 2 jobs, nursing during the day and another at night, just to keep a roof over our heads. But I feel like I'm failing her. She's so lonely and I don't know if I'm strong enough to make things better for her." Her words left Elon momentarily speechless. He saw not just the pain in her eyes, but also the fierce love and boundless sacrifice of a mother doing everything she could for her child. He placed a reassuring hand on May's shoulder, his touch gentle but firm. "You're doing far more than you give yourself credit for," he said softly. "Lila is brave, and she loves you deeply. Don't be so hard on yourself. What matters most is that you're here for her, and she knows it." May's tears continued to fall, but she nodded, her grip on Lila tightening. Elon's words seemed to offer her a small but much-needed ray of hope. Under the soft glow of the hospital room's lights, May nodded, tears still streaming down her face, but now mingled with a faint glimmer of hope. She held Lila even tighter, as though no force in the world could separate them again. Watching this, Elon felt a profound warmth fill his heart, a feeling that eclipsed even his dreams of distant stars. At that moment, the love between mother and daughter shone brighter than anything else. Elon's chest tightened as he reflected on May's story. The image of Lila sitting alone on the bus, clutching her worn teddy bear, replayed in his mind, making the situation all the more heartrending. This little girl had lost her father at such a tender age and was now navigating a world filled with uncertainty, while her mother worked tirelessly just to keep them afloat. This wasn't just a fleeting mishap. It was a fragile life hanging in the balance. Deeply moved, Elon felt an undeniable urge rise within him. Perhaps fate, or something greater, had brought him here, not by chance, but so he could play a part in rewriting their story. Without hesitation, Elon turned to May. His gaze was steady, his words a promise, etched with unwavering determination. "Let me help you and Lila," he said, his voice calm but resolute. "You shouldn't have to go through this alone. I'll make sure you and Lila have a safe place to live, and you'll never have to worry about rent again." May stared at him in disbelief, her teary eyes searching his face for confirmation that this wasn't just a dream. After months of relentless struggle, Elon's offer felt like a gentle breeze, cutting through the storm raging within her. Tentatively, she nodded, allowing exhaustion to give way to a flicker of hope. A few days later, Elon made good on his promise. He purchased a cozy, sunlit home for May and Lila, complete with a cheerful garden where Lila could run, play, and finally feel the safety she had longed for. For May, it was the first time in months she could exhale, sit down, and know she wasn't fighting alone anymore. The house wasn't just a shelter. It was a place to heal, to rebuild, and to start anew. One afternoon, after Lila had fully recovered, she and her mother prepared to move into their new home. Clutching her beloved teddy bear tightly, Lila walked up to Elon. Her bright eyes sparkled, and her tiny hands extended the bear toward him. "Thank you for helping me and Mummy," she said softly but with deep emotion. "I don't have much, but I want you to keep this bear. It will protect you, just like you protected me." Elon, a man not easily moved, felt his throat tighten and his eyes sting. He knelt to accept the precious gift, his hands trembling slightly. "I'll treasure this bear forever," he promised, his voice thick with emotion. "It will always remind me that the most important thing we can do is be there for those who need us." As the golden light of sunset bathed the scene, Lila waved goodbye to Elon before stepping into her new home. Elon stood still for a moment, holding the teddy bear in his hand, a tangible reminder of the profound connection they had formed. He realized more than ever that sometimes the greatest gifts we can give aren't material, but the hope and a chance for a new beginning. What do you think of Elon's actions and the difference he made in this little girl's life? Have you heard of other heartwarming moments involving public figures? If so, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for reading, and we'll see you in the next story.